Did you know that you are making 35,000 choices every day? And when you're a parent, you're also probably second guessing a lot of those choices, mixed with the baseline state of exhaustion and mental overwhelm, which negatively impacts your judgment. So in this episode, we are going to talk about practical, helpful, proven methods to reduce decision paralysis and decision fatigue. And where we can learn the most about this is actually in the world of business, because organizations have to make high stakes decisions every single day. What are those methods, and how can we apply them to our own family life to reduce decision paralysis and decision fatigue? Welcome to the My Family Strategist podcast. My name is Christina Spark. If it's your first time here, we tackle smart operational and financial strategies for modern parents. Let's dig in. So the first strategy I'm going to go through is how to triage decisions. When you are a first-time parent, there is no easy way to tell what is a micro decision versus a macro decision. For example, I remember in the early days of having my son Lando, the shared anxiety in my mother's group chat over whether to introduce a dummy. It seems so trivial whether to give your child a pacifier, but in our generation, when we are flooded with information overload, the consequences to that decision feel very high. You are basically told that it's going to interfere with breastfeeding, might compromise your whole journey. It'll lead to jaw development issues when your child is 7 years old. So it feels like a very tough decision that you have to make. So one of the best frameworks that we can learn from the world of business is how to triage decisions. Not all decisions require equal mental load. A small decision, like giving your child a dummy, is not the same as a decision of whether to put them into private school for 13 years. Those are really different decisions, but sometimes we approach both with the same level of energy. So in one of his early letters to shareholders, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, talked about the importance of understanding the difference between a one-way door versus two-way door decision. A one-way door decision is one that is consequential and irreversible. Basically, you walk through the door and you can't really get back out without serious cost and pain. Then there are two-way door decisions, ones where you can walk through the door, and if you don't like what you see, you can simply just turn around and walk back out. And his big warning applies perfectly to parenting as well as to organizations, which is when you look at a two-way door and treat it like a one-way door, that leads to decision paralysis. And you should not be giving equal time and weight to a two-way door decision. So things like, should I trial a meal delivery service? Should I get a casual part-time nanny on the weekends? Should I change up my sleep routine? Should I give my child a dummy? That is in fact a two-way door decision because you can take it away. Those are all two-way door decisions. It doesn't require the same heavyweight analytical processes that a one-way door decision does, such as, should I move overseas? Should I buy this new house? Should I get a divorce? Those are very high-stakes one-way door decisions that are basically irreversible without serious consequence of time and money. And one of the best learnings from the world of business is to embrace experimentation. Organizations that embrace experimentation perform better. And the reason is because you learn so much through that rapid experimentation. It's better to just try something new, learn from it, and move on, as opposed to wasting time deliberating whether to try it at all. So I think this is a brilliant method to apply to parenting because there are so many things that look so consequential and irreversible, but actually are not. A great example that I've personally been through is changing daycares. I remember when I first put Lando into daycare, something just did not seem right. He was sick all the time, and there were supervision issues. They were out of staff ratio a lot of the time. It seemed really chaotic at drop off, and everybody normalized that's just what daycare is. I remember talking to a dad that I ran into in the elevator, and I said, so what do you think about this place? His child was a little bit older, had been going there for a while. And he says, well, just kind of shrugged and went, it's the devil you know. And I feel like that statement just perfectly summarizes the fear that parents feel when they're standing in front of a two-way door and afraid to try something new. It's the fear of the unknown mixed with just how difficult life is, that it gets grouped into the too hard basket. But you don't know how much better things can be unless you experiment. So I didn't take his advice. I tried a new center. And the difference was night and day. My son was getting sick so much less often because they were outside at least 5 hours every day. They practiced really strict hygiene. It was a much smaller center where they had better supervision. It wasn't chaotic in the morning. And I wouldn't have never known that better options do exist and that you don't have to settle for something you're unhappy with had I not moved towards experimentation. And then later on, when a spot opened up at a highly recommended small nonprofit community daycare, I decided to experiment again. This time I just changed Lando 1 day a week. I thought, I'm going to experiment with this new place. Who knows? It could be better. And they were a lot cheaper. So I ended up switching them 1 day a week, and I found out that place was even better, and my son loved it even more. And over the course of the year, I saved $10,000 by switching him to a low-cost center. Sometimes it can massively pay off to try something new. And if it doesn't pay off, well, I really could have just sent my son back to his original daycare. They would have happily taken my money. So yeah, there's paperwork involved. It was a bit of a new routine. It wasn't frictionless completely, but it was definitely not meeting the threshold of highly consequential and irreversible. I know for myself, something that I really struggle with when making decisions is analysis paralysis. And I recognize that is because of my perfectionism and the need to want to have full information before I make any decision. And that's because our brains are just wired to avoid pain, to avoid mistakes. But we can also learn from the world of business that perfectionism is the enemy of progress, and it is much better to experiment and to move quickly when things are not high stakes. What Jeff Bezos says is that if you have 70% of the information, that's enough to make a decision and move on. And that's because getting to that 100% is going to be a waste of time, energy, and resource, and you're probably going to miss out if you spend too much effort there. So maybe it would be a great thing to try this week. If there's a couple decisions that you are toying with, ask yourself, if I walk through the store, can I walk back out again? And do I have at least 70% of the information I need to make a competent decision? If it is by definition a low stakes, reversible, inconsequential decision, you're better off just experimenting and trying something new. All right, let's keep moving on to other great business concepts that we can apply to parenting when it comes to decision making. So we've just talked about how to triage decisions. You don't want to use all your mental bandwidth on all decisions equally. One of the best things that you can do to help with decision paralysis is to remove decisions. And you do that through automation. So things like brushing your teeth, that's not a conscious decision that you have to make because you're on autopilot. You just do it and it's part of your routine. Finding other areas in your life to remove decisions through automation and incorporating into your daily routine is one of the best things that you can do to reduce decision fatigue and decision paralysis. So there's a famous Columbia University research on the paradox of choice. The researchers set up a display of 24 types of gourmet jams in a supermarket. And what they found is only 3% of people actually purchased jam. Then when they reduced the number of choices only to 6, what they found is that sales skyrocketed by 900%. So when humans are faced with too much choice, it actually results in no choices being made at all. Our brains actually just shut down. So one of the best things you can do is just remove choice through automation and routine. For example, finding 3 or 4 different breakfast foods that just go on rotation. So every day of the week, you just eat cereal and then it's toast and you move on. 7 years ago, I moved towards a plant-based diet. This has been so helpful when I go out to eat. I no longer have to look at these huge menus that are double-sided and like size 8 font and look at all the options that I have. I'm pretty restricted to like 10% of the menu, but I actually love it. I always find something that I really enjoy. It's great. I make decisions so quickly. I know a lot of people have expressed interest in becoming flexitarian. So 1 day a week, you only eat plant-based food. Could that be something you try out? Maybe it's a way to help with the paradox of choice. If you have trouble ordering in restaurants, you can just tell yourself, today's my day to eat plant-based, or today is the day that I'm just going to eat no red meat. That can help with choice overwhelm when you're eating out specifically. My mom has severe decision paralysis when it comes to choosing what to eat at a restaurant. And we used to find ourselves in this frustrating situation where myself, my husband, we'd be sitting around the table starving, ready to order, and the waiter would be coming in and checking in, "You're ready to order yet?" And my mom would be like, "Oh, I need more time. What we ended up doing was giving her the menu ahead of time, either the morning of or the night before, and saying, this is where we're going to go for dinner. Take your time to choose whatever you want. And there's no time pressure. There's no waiter checking in on you. You're not feeling the intensity of just sitting in a restaurant and other people are waiting for you. And it worked phenomenally well. She now can just show up at the restaurant and confidently order what to eat the moment the waiter comes by, and everybody's happy. If the menu happens to be different that day, or if they're out of stock on a certain item, she's spent enough time with that menu that she has a solid second choice. So one thing I've recently become obsessed with is Eat Club, and I'm not associated with them whatsoever. They are an app, a company, and they partner with different restaurants to offer discounts and deals to their members. So I'll open up my app and I can see, okay, there's 4 different restaurants in my area who have a deal on right now, 30% off or 40% off, either dining or takeaway. So the best part about this was not actually saving money. I mean, it's great to save 20% off, 30% off your restaurant bill, but it's eliminated decisions for me, and it's helped with the paradox of choice. Instead of scrolling Uber Eats for 45 minutes and hundreds of restaurants, I have now found a way to filter my decisions to just a handful of options in my area. It has made things so much simpler, and I'm saving money. It's the best. You should check it out. Clothing is another classic paradox of choice. What experts recommend is coming up with some type of a capsule wardrobe to reduce decisions. I'm trying to build my own capsule wardrobe. I don't think it's really feasible to throw out everything in your closet today and start over. But as I buy new things, I always ensure that it's minimalist, that it's compatible with my existing pieces, that they're timeless and classic, so that when I have to make decisions on what to wear, it's much easier for me to mix and match. There's also interesting research that shows when you set up your future self for making less decisions, it leads to more happiness. For example, laying out your outfit the night before. Or what I do for my son every day, because I have to make all of his food for school, whatever we've had for dinner that night, as I'm packing things away and putting leftovers in the fridge, I just portion out what he has the next day for lunch. So it's not a decision that I have to make, it's just a process that I follow. But the best part is the next morning, I don't have to do anything. The food is already packaged in neat little containers in a lunch bag. I just grab it and I walk out the door. I choose my son's outfits the night before. I pack his daycare bag the night before. I do everything the night before, and it makes the mornings so much smoother and reduce decisions in the morning, which is a very hectic time trying to get out the door. I think one of the best applications of building in routine is when it comes to exercise, because a lot of us, especially busy parents, have a hard time making room for exercise. This is where incorporating into a routine works wonders. On Tuesday, let's say you go to the gym, Thursday you go running, and on Saturday you do yoga. Well, you schedule in those classes and then you just go. In the morning, you tell yourself, all I have to do is put on my sneakers and get out that door. And if I'm only there for 10 minutes, that's totally okay. Because once you're there, you'll most likely have a really good workout. Just build it into the routine so you don't think about it. Don't even ask yourself in the morning, how am I feeling or should I go? You just get out the door and force yourself into autopilot mode. The last tactic I want to cover is outsourcing decision-making. Absolutely, this takes place a lot in organizations. You cannot have too many decisions falling on a single person. You need to rely on your teammates, on your reports, on other people around you to help you make those decisions. So when it comes to the world of parenting, the way that I interpret this is whoever is in charge of my child on that day is responsible for making decisions. I am not going to micromanage them. If they are trustworthy, competent people, then they can make the decisions. This includes your spouse, your grandparents, your daycare, your babysitters, your nannies. They are the decision-making authorities while your child is under their care. So sometimes in practice, this is a little bit hard because, for example, right now we are toilet training my son. And so consistency is obviously important. And so part of me would really love to micromanage exactly how his daycare educators, his grandparents are approaching toilet training. But instead, what I generally say is, here is what the experts have told me. This is what's working well at home. Here is where I've had success. But ultimately, it has to be up to them. I'm going to exhaust myself if I try to micromanage every little thing. And I might learn something new by outsourcing that decision to someone else. Maybe they'll try something that I didn't, and I can learn from that. Now, it's important to clarify that this does not mean you don't set expectations and boundaries on the way that you want to parent. It is up to you to share that after a certain time, your child does not nap. we do not give any screen time, or we cap screen time at X minutes a day, or we don't give our child junk food. Those are the ways that you want to parent, and those people that you entrust your children with need to make decisions in line with how you want to parent. So for example, my son Lando is with his grandparents every Friday. Whatever they want to do for activities is totally up to them. Whatever they want to eat for lunch is up to them. I pretty much just have one rule, which is don't let him nap in the late afternoon. Other than that, enjoy. The mental bandwidth of that day is gone. Erin and I actually outsource decision-making to each other all the time. So we went through the Fair Play game cards based on the book Fair Play by Eve Rodsky. I've shared this in a previous episode, but essentially we went through every single household chore in our lives and we divided it. The purpose is to remove all decision-making, all mental bandwidth related to that choice, and have that person own that task from end-to-end completion without burdening the other person. So for example, I am the owner of gifting. So when it comes to our loved ones, kids' birthday parties, I'm responsible for deciding on the gift, purchasing it, and wrapping it and bringing it to the party. That's what I do. And I signed up for it because I like it. Aaron has his own separate tasks that he owns. So for example, he chooses all of our meals. We do meal prep. We use a meal delivery service. We use HelloFresh, again, not associated with them. It's just what we use at home. And he chooses what we eat for the week. He picks out everything. I don't care what we eat. I'm happy for him to just own that decision end to end. And it takes one thing off my plate. And we literally have gone through every single chore in our home and we have clear owners for each so that the number of decisions has been cut by half in our household. And that saves our mental bandwidth. So a funny situation that I found myself in with Aaron. Aaron was infamous at putting Lando in his hand-me-down stained daycare clothes on our nice weekend outings. So one part of me thought, well, you're the parent. If you're getting him dressed, then it's your decision on what he wears. But because this was important to me, we created choice architecture. Okay, we have two drawers. One's a daycare drawer and one's a non-daycare drawer. And I just shared with him, can you please put Lando in his non-daycare clothes on the weekends? And he was happy to do that. So in that case, it completely solved our problem. So those are ways that you can still put in place either architecture or ways to encourage decisions, but you're not micromanaging. Now, if you are finding that you have a carer in your child's life who is not making good decisions and they're not respecting your ways of parenting, like I have a friend, for example, and her mother will literally let her daughter, her toddler daughter, sleep for like 2 or 3 hours into the evenings, and this child goes to bed at midnight. That is clearly not what's best for the family. And if the boundary has been shared and it continues to be crossed, it might be time to reassess your schedule and the people that you entrust your children with. Or perhaps there's ways that you can re-architect choices so that that's not an obstacle. For example, mom might be able to do babysitting in other ways, not around nap time. I hope you found these tactics and tools helpful when it comes to decision-making, reducing decision paralysis and decision fatigue. Next week, I want to talk more about one-way door decisions because they're highly consequential and they have a significant financial component. At times, they're irreversible. Most of the topics we cover on this podcast are one-way door decisions. We actually do need to go into the data and the economics. So next episode, I'm going to share more about my favorite business frameworks to help with making high-stakes one-way door decisions in line with your values. So make sure you hit subscribe so you're notified when that new episode comes out. I hope you have a great day.